Hello and welcome to Global News Factory. I'm your host Vikrant. A loser always finds someone else to blame. That is the easiest way to hide your own mess. And right now, that is exactly what the US is doing. Trump bragged he would end the war in 24 hours. That's circus line. We are now 7 months into his presidency, and Ukraine is still a smoldering mess. No ceasefire, no peace, just more dead bodies and more money burned. For years, Trump called it Biden's war. See, Biden is politically 6 feet under now. So, who is the new punching bag? It is Modi, India's Prime Minister. Yes, you heard that right. Peter Navarro has just called the Ukraine war Modi's war. His logic: Russia funds its military with oil money and India buys Russian oil. Case closed. Blame India. Otherwise, we would have stopped it in 24 hours. It is India which is stopping.
When India buys Russian oil at a discount, and then Indian refiners in partnership in India with Russian refiners make that and sell it at a premium to the rest of the world, right? Russia uses the money it gets to fund its war machine, kill more Ukrainians, and then the next thing that happens, of course, is Ukraine comes to us and Europe and says, give us some more money. So everybody in America loses because of what India is doing. The consumers and businesses and everything lose, and workers lose because India's high tariffs cost us jobs and factories and income and higher wages. And then the taxpayers lose because we got to fund Modi's war, okay? The road to peace runs at least partly right through New Delhi.
War?
I mean Modi's war.
Let me ask
because the road to peace runs in part through New Delhi. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Now let's pull the curtain back on the facts. Who was the first US president to supply lethal weapons to Ukraine directly, poking the Russian bear? It was not Biden. It was not Obama. It was Trump. During his first term, Trump approved sending Javelin anti-tank missiles to Ukraine after years of debate. Along with those Javelins came snipers, ammo, and other military gear. At the time, Washington said this would deter Russia and help Ukraine. What it really did was paint a big target on Ukraine's back and push Putin into a corner. This war has Trump's fingerprints all over it. And now that war is spiraling out of control. Trump has zero leverage over Putin. EU warmongers have hijacked Trump's Ukraine policy by throwing money on his face. Basically, Trump is clueless now. All what he cares about is his 10% markup on all weapons being sent to Ukraine.
Right now, we are selling arms to the Europeans, who are then selling them on to the Ukrainians, and President Trump's taking a 10% markup on the arms.
So his lackeys have cooked up a genius narrative. It is Modi's war, they say. If you blame India, then you shift the responsibility of ending the war onto Modi instead of Trump. It is political cowardice at its finest. Navarro even threw in a sermon. India, you are the biggest democracy in the world. Act like one.
What's troubling to me, Joe, is that the Indians are so arrogant about this. They say, oh, we don't have higher tariffs. Oh, it's our sovereignty. We can buy oil from anyone we want. India, you're the biggest democracy in the world, okay? Act like one. Side with the democracies. You're getting in bed with the authoritarians. China, you've been at quiet war with them for decades. They invaded Aksai Chin and all your territory. These are not your friends, folks, okay? And the Russians, I mean, come on.
The irony here could power the entire India grid for a year. Well, he says a democracy should side with the democracy, just like the US sides with Pakistan's military junta, just like the US rolled out the red carpet for Pakistan's army chief Asim Munir in the White House, just like Trump himself slapped 50% tariffs on India while sipping chai with Pakistan's generals in the White House. Let me give Navarro a brief history lesson here. The US gave extensive military and economic aid to Pakistan's military during the Soviet-Afghan War in the 1970s and 80s to counter Soviet influence in Afghanistan. Now, this aid indirectly backed Pakistan's efforts to destabilize India, a democracy, through covert support for insurgencies in Kashmir. The US talking about democracy is rich. This is the same country that armed coups across South America and funded dictators in Africa. So please spare us the moral lectures. India buys Russian oil because it is cheap and because it serves its own interests. Period. Interests of 1.4 billion people. Well, look at this. The US still buys oil from Venezuela while sanctioning Venezuela at the same time. I was so surprised when I first read about this. But India, hey, you cannot import oil from Russia, behave like a mature democracy, and always obey Washington. That is the message. Sorry, not happening. The truth is simple. This war was never Modi's war. It was never India's war. It is Trump's war. He lit the fire by shipping weapons to Ukraine. He failed to put it out. And now he is scapegoating others while his own house burns. The more Washington tries to shift blame, the more it looks like a desperate empire in decline, unable to face its own failures. And that is the real story. Moving on, Moldova is about to become the next geopolitical battleground. The country goes to polls next month, and the stakes could not be higher. Moldovans face a simple but brutal choice: stick with Brussels technocrats or pivot towards Russia, towards sovereignty. And President Maya Sandu knows her grip on power is slipping. Maya Sandu, EU's own favorite dictator. Now, Sandu has been parading herself as Moldova's ticket to the European Union, the EU. Her pitch is clear: keep me in office and you will get the EU golden ticket. But voters are not buying it. Her approval ratings are cratering. The fresh polls reveal that 34.9% of Moldovans openly disapprove of her performance, while only 30.6% still support her. It is a warning siren. Why are Moldovans fed up? Because life has only gotten worse. The economy was fragile to begin with, then came back-to-back shocks. COVID, the Ukraine war next door, and Europe's self-inflicted energy crisis. But the real anger is about how Sandu's government handled those crises. Critics say she spent more time waving the EU flag and less time fixing empty wallets and skyrocketing bills. And now, full-blown panic. Sandu's master plan ahead of elections next month is not about convincing voters, it is about crushing the opposition. On August 5, Evgenia Gutsul, the elected head of the autonomous Gagauzia region, was handed a 7-year prison sentence for allegedly financing the banned SOR, the SOR party. That very same day, another party official, Svetlana Popan, got 6 years. Now, for 2 years now, Moldovan authorities have been dismantling any political group that does not worship Brussels. The SOR party, for example, led by exiled oligarch Ilan Shor, was banned in June 2 years back after being declared unconstitutional. Their crime? Advocating neutrality and better ties with Russia. In Sandu's Moldova, that is enough to get you labeled pro-Kremlin and thrown behind bars. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Sandu has taken a hard pro-West turn. She even claimed Moscow is plotting a coup in Moldova. Her latest warning: Russia is supposedly preparing unprecedented interference in the elections. But when you look at what is happening on the ground, the real interference does not seem to be coming from Moscow, it is from Brussels, the EU. On Wednesday, Moldova marked 34 years since independence from the Soviet Union, and who showed up? Imagine. Not some neutral observers. The leaders of France, Germany, and Poland all flew in for a photo op. Macron declared, I'm quoting him, Moldova matters and its future lies with Europe and the European Union. Translation: vote for Sandu or else? The EU is not just cheering from the sidelines, they are on the pitch. This is EU panic mode, plain and simple. Brussels sees Moldova slipping from their hands. They know the West's credibility is on the line. If Sandu loses these elections, it is not just a local election defeat, it is another blow to Europe's already shrinking influence east of the Dniester. The West fears that a sovereign government in Chisinau could tilt the entire region away from their grip. Moldovans are tired of being used as pawns in someone else's geopolitical game. Tired of being told their country's future lies in Brussels while their present is plagued with poverty. Sandu's narrative is that only she can save Moldova from Russia, but the polls say otherwise. And when the West sends in its heavyweights days before elections, it reeks of desperation. Well, that is all for now. Thank you very much for being with me. You're watching GNF.